tonight I'm going to be making some bread, so I thought I'd bring you along with me and show you my bread making routine. I started off earlier in the day feeding my starter heavily because I knew I wanted to stock up the freezer with some bread because we're just about out of my last stash. Depending on what season it is, will determine how your rise times are and when you need to start this. But in the wintertime, this is generally my routine, is that early in the morning, I will feed my starter so that it's ready to go before bed, and then I'll get some bread doughs going that can ferment overnight. I'm going to be using hard red wheat. That's my favorite, but hard white wheat is really good too. And I'm going to be making 2 loaves of bread, sandwich bread, and I decided I was going to make a batch of pizza dough. I like to have this on hand because this is something I can quickly throw in the oven and make an easy dinner or lunch if I don't have anything prepared. So I don't necessarily have any plans to use that, but I might. Now, I knew I wanted to make this bread, but I didn't think super far in advance to remember to get stuff ready. So instead of pulling out my butter in advance, I needed to melt it and then let it cool on the stovetop. So while my flour is milling, I am going to get that butter going so it can be nice and cooled before I put it into the dough, because if it's too hot, same with your water, if it's too hot, it will kill your yeast. So the recipe I'm using for this sandwich bread comes from Farmhouse on Boone, and I used to use this recipe when I used all-purpose or bread flour, and I didn't change anything actually, and I have been able to get just as good results with my freshly milled flour. I love that. I got so used to this recipe, I was going to be sad if I had to try a new one, because once you find a tried and true bread recipe, you got to stick to it. 'Cause anytime I try something new, I just don't like it the same. And what I will say is that I got this KitchenAid maybe not even 2 years ago, I don't think. And I'm very grateful for it. My husband got it for me. But ever since getting it, I realized I probably should have gotten a better stand mixer with a stronger motor, because I do a lot of baking, and sometimes when I make this bread, it heats up. I was actually just talking about this with a friend, and she was asking if I had the same issue, and yeah, so probably when I get to a point when I have used this too much and worn it down, we'll have to get a new mixer. So if anyone wants to get one, I don't recommend the KitchenAid. Sorry. Anyways, look at this beautiful starter. I love my starter so much. It doesn't actually take that long for it to rise. Sometimes I'll have to give it some time if I really scraped out like everything out of the jar, but usually it only takes like 6 hours at most. I love this starter. I use it very often. It's 2 years old now, and I can do just about anything with it. I don't really have issues anymore. It's funny, I can think back to when I first started making sourdough bread, and I was so like rigid about the timing and worried that I would mess it up. And now I just, when I want to make something, I pull it out, feed it. Maybe it might not work with the timing perfectly, but then I can pause the timing. I can go put it in the fridge, or I can do a discard recipe. Like, sourdough doesn't have to be intimidating, and everyone gets all worried about doing it. You're going to mess it up. But really, it's just like any other yeast. It just takes longer, and you could speed up the timing by putting it in a warm spot on a heating pad. You can slow it down by putting it in the fridge. Sourdough is just awesome. All right, so I got that bread dough going. I realized I forgot the water, so that's no good. So I added that in, and now I'm working on my pizza dough. I love this recipe because it can sit and ferment on the counter for sometimes even 24 hours if it's cold enough, and it's not hard to manage when I'm rolling it out. Um, and I love that I can use whole grains in it. I used to just make it with white flour, and I switched over to whole grains, and this recipe still turns out amazing and everybody likes it. So, like I said, I don't know if I'm going to use this pizza dough, but I like to have things stocked. I usually have at least 3 or 4 loaves of bread in my freezer at all times, and I like to have 1 to 2 pizza doughs, at least the dough. If I can shape it out, roll it out, shape it, and put some sauce and cheese and toppings on it and flash freeze that, I did that for postpartum and it was awesome. I love having prepped meals because sometimes I just have stuff going on, or honestly, me and my husband eat a lot of food. I'm breastfeeding and he's a man. And sometimes I'll be like, wow, we don't really have enough for this meal and I don't have any meat thawed. So I just love having meals prepped. So with this pizza, it's really easy. For postpartum, I think I froze like 3 prepped pizzas and it was so nice and easy. I really like with fully fermented sourdough bread that, especially with freshly milled flour, it's a little bit more dense than you would get with a regular yeast, and that makes it easier to freeze and thaw, in my opinion. It doesn't stick together as much because I don't like lay out each slice of bread and flash freeze it. I don't have room in my freezer for that. So when I need bread, I either pull out a whole loaf depending on how much I need, or I just pull out slices and just toast them, and they they thaw just fine. And so I like to make a bunch of bread at once and then just pull it out as I need. Think that it tastes great and it kind of develops even more of a sour flavor, which I just really like sourdough, so that doesn't bother me. So this sandwich bread recipe, the pizza dough, my artisan bread recipe, which I showed a few videos back, and my pie crust that I did for my chicken pot pie, and I can also turn those into biscuits, just add some milk and eggs. I love those recipes. Those are my staple recipes, and I can use them for so many different things if I want to switch it up. And it's easy because I have mastered those recipes. The one thing I need to master with whole grains is dinner rolls. I don't know what is going on. I don't know what my problem is, but when I was using regular just white flour, I could make the most delicious, fluffy dinner rolls, whether they were fully fermented or not. And every time I try to do it with whole grains, they just fall flat like a pancake, which I will still eat. I'll probably just use it for breadcrumbs, so that's disappointing when you're planning a meal like hamburgers or something and you need these buns and you're like, what is this? So, if you have any tips, let me know. Still trying to figure that out, and I might just have to come up with my own recipe because I keep trying other people's recipe and it's not working out. Okay, so look at this dough. The consistency that you see here, it's very soft, easy to knead. It's not sticking to my hands. It's elastic. Your dough needs to look like this. If it doesn't look like this, you either didn't put enough water or butter or whatever your fat is that you're using, or it wasn't kneaded long enough. If it doesn't look like this, you need to fix it because during the bulk ferment process, it will just remain dense, and it's going to result in you having a not so ideal loaf. It's going to be very dense. It's not going to rise very much. So you look at this pizza dough as well. It is very easy to work with. It's not sticking to the counter. There's like no flour on the counter at this point. It's soft. You need it to look like this. At first, mine did not look like this, and I would get these like rocks until I was like, okay, I'm gonna pull it out of the mixer and knead it for longer. And sometimes you have to add more water into your mixture. If it's just really tough, add some more water, knead it for longer. So I got this bread dough going at about 6:30 before I got the kids ready for bed. And then I wake up really early with my husband. So after that, I got breakfast going. And then I came back to this dough at probably like 5 to 6 maybe. So it was about a 12-hour almost ferment. And now I'm going to transfer this pizza dough into the fridge and let this do a cold ferment. And if I don't end up using this in the next few days, I will just freeze it. And then I'm going to move on and start shaping my sandwich bread loaves. I like to use glass loaf pans, and I'm going to grease them up really well. Because I'm getting this second rise done early, and it is pretty cold in my kitchen, it is going to take a little bit longer for this dough to do its second rise. But that's okay. I have plenty of time, and this will help it to continue to ferment and work on those health benefits. What I would recommend that I never do, and I always think about it after I make the bread, is to weigh your dough. I always just eyeball it, and then I have one loaf that's smaller than the other one. If you don't care, that's fine, but especially when you're making rolls or buns, you don't want to have all these different sizes. I mean, unless the little ones like little buns, but weigh your dough because I did the exact same thing I always do is I made one too small, but that's okay. It still tasted delicious. So that's what I should have done here. When I pulled it out of the bowl, I should have weighed them, but I'm just going to get this out with my bench scraper, this plastic, or I think it's a bowl scraper. I love this thing. And then I am going to divide this into two. When I shape these loaves, I'm going to do a similar shaping process as I do with my artisan bread. I like to, when after I roll them out and I shape them into loaves, create tension. This helps with oven spring, especially with sourdough bread. Like I said, it can be a little bit more dense, especially with whole grains. So when I create tension against the countertop by rolling it, this really helps with the oven spring and it helps the ends to seal in all the way so you don't get a crack in your bread. By the way, I love this rolling pin. My mother-in-law got me this one. I prefer the ones without the handles on them. I like them so much better. I think they're easier to work with. It kind of looks like I'm struggling here because I should have moved stuff out of the way and I was trying not to move anything or knock anything over. But, anyways, just like me, always trying to do what's easiest. And I'm like, it's really not that big of a deal, just like how I should have weighed my dough. Another thing I love about this dough is it doesn't really over ferment. I've never really let it get to that point of like forgetting about it or getting caught up and it over ferments. Like I said, I've let this sit out for a long time before and it was just fine. It was just really sour, which means that it's got more of those health benefits. So I really like this. If you've never tried this recipe, I will link it down below. Just give it a try. I know that sourdough bread can be very intimidating, and starting with artisan bread, I don't recommend that. It might seem simple because it's just water, flour, salt, and starter, but there's an art to that, and that can get really intimidating, and then you could be like, man, I ain't gonna do this. So start off with some sandwich bread. It's very versatile, delicious. So here it is after it did its second rise, and I turned on the oven part of the way through to speed that up. And now I'm just gonna pop these in the oven. And these turned out so beautiful and so delicious. My boys were standing there at the table just like, "Can I have some? Is it ready?" And I never cut into my bread right away because it doesn't turn out well unless you're willing to eat the whole thing in one sitting. It will dry it out. So they always hate having to wait, but that's the rule. We have to wait because I don't want to ruin our bread. All right. Well, that's going to wrap up this video about my weekly baking. I hope that you enjoyed. If you did, please give it a like, subscribe, and comment what you'd like to see from me next. If you have any sourdough or baking tips, let me know down below so we can all learn from each other. If you enjoy this type of content and the things I like to talk about, you could also give me a follow on Instagram and Facebook and see more day-to-day updated stuff that I post. Another thing that I haven't really talked about much on this channel is I'm very passionate about pregnancy and postpartum, and so you'll see some more videos about that coming soon. Well, until next time, have a good day. God bless.